Like gripping stories? Hit subscribe and help us hit 1,000 subs. Every view counts. Let's dive in. The Vengeful Revenant. Part 1. Graveside Oath. They say the dead rest easy. Whoever said that never died like I did. Not with your hands bound behind your back. Not with your name slandered, dragged through headlines like it meant nothing. Not with the cold muzzle of betrayal pressed behind your ear by someone who once shook your hand and said, "We've got your back." No, I didn't die easy, and I sure as hell didn't stay dead. My name was Darius Graves. I served in the 173rd Airborne. Saw blood in valleys that don't show up on maps. After that, I went private, contractor work, then federal asset. I hunted dirty contracts, ghost payments, missing aid. I was good at finding rot. I'd peel back the polished layers until the truth bled through, until the ones in charge saw what they tried to bury. And I was real good at digging. But you get too close to power, real power, they don't just fire you, they erase you. I remember the exact moment it all shifted. Sitting at a folding desk in a dark safe house, one desk lamp buzzing overhead. I was staring at a report that didn't match the other books. A payout to a contractor who didn't exist. The numbers weren't just off, they were engineered. I'd seen this before. In Helmand, in Kandahar. Shell companies used to wash blood money, funneling it through legitimate fronts until it came out clean. Only this time, the stink wasn't coming from some tribal warlord. It was coming from Washington, D.C. The name on the bottom of that ledger? Senator Roland Greaves. Decorated warhawk. Patriotic darling. A man who made speeches with one hand on the Bible and the other gripping a lobbyist wallet. I took it to my handler. He went pale before I even finished the second sentence. Didn't even pretend to stall me. He just said, "You need to let this go." That's when I knew. I was already a dead man walking. I packed that night. One go bag, burner phone, encrypted hard drives, 2 fake passports, and note. Not a confession, just a breadcrumb. For someone I trusted. Didn't matter. They got me first. Black SUV. No plates. I was crossing an intersection when the lights flared, too bright to process. I heard tires. Then the slam of metal. Then black. No afterlife. No tunnel of light. Just dirt. I woke up choking on it. Buried. Deep. The wood above me splintered as my nails clawed through it. Air was wet with rot. My hands bloodied raw, or digging without command. Panic turned to fury. Then clarity. They buried me like trash. But I wasn't trash. I was the goddamn evidence. And somehow rage brought me back. Not grace. Not a miracle. Rage. At first, I thought maybe I was a ghost. But ghosts don't feel pain like I did. Ghosts don't hear their own heart pounding in their ears. Turns out, I wasn't brought back by fate. I was brought back by Cerber Solutions. Black budget. Off books. Not even alphabet agencies had full visibility. They ran a program, Ashborn, designed to recover and reanimate high-value assets. I was their first field test. Prototype 001. I came back wrong. Something about dying changes a man. Your soul doesn't just reboot. It fractures. The version of me that clawed out of that grave, he wasn't interested in mercy. I don't feel cold the same way anymore. Food tastes like ash. Sleep never comes. But pain? That's still real. That, I remember. Now I walk again. Not as a man. Not as a ghost. But as a verdict. They thought they buried a problem. But what they dug up was something far worse. I'm not here for closure. I'm not here for redemption. I'm here for payback. And it starts now. Part 2. Blood Ledger. There's a moment, right after you crawl out of your own grave, when the world feels wrong. Not just quiet. Still. Like time saw you rise and decided to take a step back. Like the universe can't quite process what you are now. I stood barefoot in that cemetery, covered in dirt and rot. Mud caked my knees. Fingernails cracked and bloodied. Chest heaving like I just sprinted from hell. My lungs burned. My skin felt foreign, numb and too tight, like I'd been shrink-wrapped in my own corpse. In the distance, the city pulsed. Lights blinking in towers, cars humming on highways, people going about their lives. No one screamed. No sirens. Just business as usual. And me? I wasn't part of that world anymore. I wasn't alive. Not in the way they were. But I wasn't done either. I limped into the shadows, keeping low. Didn't have a plan, just instinct. Some part of me still remembered how to disappear. Because once you've worked in the places I have, death is just another uniform. I made my way to an old stash house I used when I was still chasing ghosts in the system. Back when I thought rooting out corruption meant something. It was a place no one knew about. No address. No digital footprint. Just a rusted lock behind a pawn shop basement, beneath a flickering neon sign that hadn't worked in years. Inside, it smelled like dust and secrets. Mildew in the walls. Rat droppings in the corners. But everything I'd left behind? Still there. Untouched. false panel on the floor, just like I remembered. Inside, a duffel bag, layered with plastic and paranoia. Weapons, ammo, a small satellite modem, and most important, a drive. Black matte casing, no label, just heat-sinked and cold to the touch. I plugged it into a shielded laptop, booted up the offline OS. Everything I'd spent 2 years collecting came back to life. They thought killing me meant erasing the evidence. They forgot I planned for this. The ledger wasn't just numbers. It was a map. Fake bids, stolen disaster funds, contract skimming, shell core moving cash through charities, churches, even veterans groups. And behind it all, names. Greaves was just the face. There were more. Senators, CEOs, high-ranking generals, and not just Americans. Russian brokers, Chinese intermediaries, a few Middle Eastern contractors I recognized from my deployments. Hell, there was even a name I hadn't seen in years, Father McLaren, the guy who blessed my platoon before we deployed to Nangarhar. Turns out, he was blessing gun shipments disguised as aid crates. It wasn't just corruption. It was a machine. Cerberus wasn't a company. It was a congregation. And every person listed in that drive was feeding off the same dying carcass, conflict. They sold fear like stock options, invested in war like it was real estate. They didn't just profit from chaos. They built it. And I was never meant to live long enough to see the final blueprint. But now I had it, the full scope, the entire twisted tree. And I swore, right then, on the ashes still clinging to my skin, I would prune that tree, limb by limb, root by rotten root. Not through courts, not through the press. Those places were compromised, bought and owned. No, this was personal now. Justice is what you ask for. Reckoning is what you take. And I was done asking. Part 3, Ashes and Teeth. They say the worst part of coming back from the dead is realizing you didn't come back alone. When I clawed my way out of that grave, I thought I was one of a kind. A fluke, a glitch in a system too twisted to predict what I'd become. But that feeling deep in my spine, like I was being followed by my own shadow, that wasn't paranoia. That was instinct. Cerberus didn't bring me back because they believed in redemption. They did it because I was useful. A test run. And I passed. I was their proof of concept. Turns out, Ashborn wasn't a project. It was a factory. They were making more of me. I tracked the source of the resurrection logs to a decommissioned power plant in southern Missouri. Concrete shell, overgrown fencing, no guards on the outside. But inside, the heat signatures told a different story. I went in armed. Silenced carbine, close quarters knife, Kevlar stitched with ceramic plates. Not because I feared dying again, but because I remembered how dying felt. Inside, it smelled like copper and decay. Electric hum vibrating through my boots. Red floodlights blinked from above like warning beacons no one had answered. Then I saw them. 3 of them. Pale, still, but not dead. Cryo scars on their necks. Sutures on their spines. Eyes that looked straight through me, like they knew the exact temperature of my blood. One step forward, 6'5" at least. Scar carved deep down his temple. Moved with surgical precision, like a machine wearing a man's skin. And when he spoke, his voice sounded like mine. If all the soul had been vacuumed out of it. You were the first. We were the perfected. They attacked in sync. No hesitation. No emotion. Steel against steel. Blades ringing in that hollow chamber like church bells at a funeral. I moved fast, muscle memory taking over. Dropped the first with a pipe to the throat. Crushed his windpipe, though he didn't scream. Second one came at me with a serrated blade. Sloppy. Overconfident. I used his momentum, turned it on him. His own blade pierced his chest, deep enough that I felt the vibration in my wrist. The third was different. He didn't attack right away. He circled. Watched. Then he spoke, voice colder, more deliberate. We were made to follow you. You were supposed to lead us. I didn't answer. Instead, I hit him with a lead pipe and drove him backward into a fuse box. The voltage lit him up, his body spasming like a puppet on live wire. He didn't scream. He laughed. They're coming next, he said. They'll finish what you couldn't. I should have put a bullet in him then and there. But the truth hit me harder than anything he said. I wasn't the only Revenant. Not by a long shot. I was just the only one they couldn't control. The others? They were trained, programmed, conditioned to serve Cerberus without question. They didn't feel rage. They felt orders. And worse, they weren't hiding. They were waiting. I torched the plant, used a full tank of accelerant, rigged charges along the walls. When I walked away, flames chased the sky like a flare in the dark. But fire couldn't burn away what I knew. Cerberus didn't bring me back as a second chance. They brought me back to lead, to be their god of vengeance. But they couldn't leash me, couldn't brand me. And now they were trying to replace me. Revenants were real. The world just didn't know it yet. but soon it would. And I'd be ready. Because if they wanted war, they just dug up the wrong corpse. Part 4. The Hollow Truth. Not everyone who watched me die pulled the trigger. Some just looked the other way. That's what betrayal looks like in the real world. It's not always a gunshot or a blade in the back. Sometimes it's silence. Averted eyes. Phones that don't answer. Friends who vanish when the heat turns up. Lena Cross used to be one of the good ones. Award-winning journalist. Pulitzer finalist. The kind of woman who could take a whisper of corruption and turn it into a televised reckoning. She and I worked together once, quietly. Back when I thought exposing the truth was enough to change something. Back when I still believed the system wanted to be cleaned. She published 2 of my biggest leaks. Military spending misappropriation and a black market pipeline out of Kandahar. We weren't friends exactly, but there was trust. Or at least, there used to be. After I died, she ghosted. Deleted her socials. Burned her bylines. Vanished like she knew the bullet that killed me had her name on the casing too. It took me a month to track her down. An apartment in Charleston. 3rd floor. Curtains always drawn. No mail. No deliveries. She lived like a fugitive, like someone waiting for the knock that never came. I watched from the alley. Waited until she left for groceries. She didn't see me until I was 3 feet away. She froze. The color drained from her face like someone had just whispered the name of a dead god. And then, quietly, breathlessly, she said, "You're supposed to be dead." We stood there in silence for a second. No hugs. No reunion. Just the weight of a secret too big to carry. She didn't ask what happened to me. She already knew. I followed her back to her apartment. She didn't object. Just locked the door behind us and pulled a hard drive from behind a loose vent. No words. Just truth. "They're watching everything," she whispered. "Mics. Cameras. Phones. Even the neighbors might be plants." She told me Cerberus hadn't collapsed after Ashborn leaked. It evolved. Smaller, smarter, deeper. They abandoned public contracts. Started going fully private. Corporate intelligence, high-yield assassinations, memory suppression testing. Ashborn wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And now, they were global. Lena had the proof, metadata logs, offshore bank trails, internal communications that reference Project Echo, Black Eden, and something called the Final Garden. She hadn't published them because she couldn't. Every outlet she trusted was compromised. Every editor bought or blackmailed. "I'm not safe," she said. "And now that you're here, neither are you." That's when the van pulled up. Unmarked. Matte black. Tactical posture. For men inside. They came fast. I shoved Lena through the back and told her to run. She hesitated just long enough to memorize my eyes, like she was burning my face in her memory, just in case. Then she vanished into the alley. I didn't. The first attacker swung low, taser baton meant to disable, not kill. Wrong move. I shattered his kneecap with a boot stomp and used his own weapon to fry the second one's chest rig. The other 2 tried flanking. I snapped the driver's arm through the window and dragged him out headfirst. The last one ran. I let him. He'd take the story back with him. Let them know the ghost wasn't just alive. He was hunting. Back inside, I grabbed the drive Lena gave me. Clutched it like a dying prayer. Because the truth? It wasn't a shield. It was a weapon. But even truth has a cost. And I'd already paid mine in blood. This wasn't about justice anymore. Justice is for courts. For systems. I'd seen what those systems did to men like me. No, I wasn't chasing justice anymore. I was erasing it. One name at a time. Part 5. House of Thorns. Some homes were their evil like bloodstains. Others, like perfume. The Greaves estate was the latter. Tucked away in the Virginia countryside, past the horse farms and country clubs, wrapped in tall hedges and iron gates polished like they belonged to royalty. Old money. New crimes. The place didn't scream villainy, it whispered it. In Italian marble. In vintage wine sealed tight in vaults. In priceless art curated by people who'd never survived a war, but knew how to profit from one. It was too clean. Too symmetrical. Like no one had ever bled there. But I could smell the rot beneath the lacquered wood. Veronica Greaves lived there. Only child of Senator Roland Greaves, the man whose name sat at the bottom of my death warrant. She wasn't just his daughter. She was logistics. She made Ashborn run. Shell accounts, identity transfers, shipment authorizations. She was the keystroke between a grave and a resurrection. I didn't break in. I walked up the front steps. Some part of me wanted to be seen. The security system didn't ping. The door opened before I knocked. And there she was. Veronica. Early 30s. Blazer like armor. Hair slicked back like she was going to court instead of facing down a revenant. Not surprised. Not scared. Just curious. "They said you'd come," she said, as calm as if I were a dinner guest. I stepped inside. Every inch of the place was designed to distract from the truth. Oil paintings of cavalry charges, signed treaties, family heirlooms on a glass. But I wasn't here to admire history. I was here to burn it down. She led me to a sitting room. No guards, no panic button, just a single red-sealed file on the coffee table. She tapped it lightly with her nails. Your resurrection wasn't a mistake, she said. It was a filter, a test. I said nothing. She kept going. You survived the reanimation without psychological compromise. That's rare. Most of them fracture, paranoia, hallucinations, suicide loops. But you came back, focused. She leaned in. Ashborn wasn't the real program, Darius. It was a door, a hallway. The real machine is older and much deeper. She called it the Inner Council, a cabal of strategists, scientists, financiers, Cerberus's spinal cord. People I'd never heard of, but who shaped history behind mirror glass. They weren't chasing immortality. They were testing obedience. Ashborn wasn't about bringing soldiers back. It was about building a new kind of loyalty. You were never meant to stay dead, she said. You were meant to come back and lead them. That's when it clicked. The faces in Missouri. The Revenants I fought. The one who called me their leader. They weren't rogue. They were following protocol. Mine. I stood slowly. How many did you bring back? I asked. She smiled. Not cruel. Not arrogant. Pleased. Enough, she said. But not all of them passed. You're special, Darius. They call you the unbound. The one without tether. You could be something important. I stepped back. Then I reached into my jacket, lit a magnesium strip, and tossed it on the antique rug. The fire bloomed fast. Silk curtains curled into ash. Smoke clawed its way across the vaulted ceiling like it wanted to scream. She didn't flinch, didn't cough, didn't beg. She just watched me walk away through the smoke and said, "You're not the only one they brought back." I left her there, in that gilded tomb, surrounded by secrets. Let the flames decide what stayed buried. Because if I wasn't the only revenant, then this wasn't vengeance anymore. This was war, and I'd only just begun. Part 6, The Others. There's a moment in every soldier's life when the mission stops being about orders and starts being about instinct. Mine came the night I stared at the hard drive Lena had handed me, the one soaked in truth and danger in equal measure. It wasn't just a leak. It was a blueprint. And in the middle of all those files, one phrase kept flashing on screen, repeating like a heartbeat. Echo Protocol. I didn't recognize it at first, but the deeper I dug, the colder my blood ran. Echo Protocol was designed for one purpose: to neutralize rogue revenants, to erase the unbound, to erase me. Cerberus knew from the start that not all of their experiments would stay loyal. They planned for it. They always do. And out of the entire Ashborn roster, guess who topped the threat index? Me. They even gave me a designation. Unbound // class, red, 1 // termination approved. I was their biggest liability, the broken link in the resurrection chain. But I wasn't alone anymore. That same ledger, riddled with ghost files and encryption traps, contained names. Dozens. Some I recognized. Black Ops, Kia, declared heroes posthumously. Others? No record at all. Ghosts even in life. Cerberus hadn't brought back a handful of assets. They'd built an army, and not all of them were asleep. Some had been activated. One in particular made the screen flicker. Dust, Sable, operative status, active, assignment, terminate unbound. Sable Dust, former CIA wet work, declared Kia in 2013 after a mission went sideways in Aleppo. I remember reading the after-action report. It was a mess: civilian casualties, friendly fire, mass disinformation. Now I knew why. Sable didn't die in Aleppo. He volunteered to die, and Cerberus brought him back with one purpose: to hunt me down. He was what came after me. The upgraded model. Not just stronger, not just faster. Loyal. The kind of loyal you can't beat into someone. The kind you resurrect and rewire. The kind that doesn't sleep, doesn't hesitate. I found him in an abandoned rail yard outside Detroit. The sky was gray. Air tasted like burnt copper and old diesel. And the silence? It felt like a setup. He didn't speak at first. Just stood there in that blackout armor. Matte plating, no insignias, no expression. Like a shadow that had grown teeth. And then, slowly, like he was reciting a eulogy. You were meant to lead us. His voice was colder than mine. Flat. Hollow. Stripped of anything that used to be human. Instead, you ran. You broke protocol. You became a contagion. I didn't answer. I just drew steel. He moved first. Fast. I barely had time to react before the first blow landed, like a freight train wrapped in Kevlar. He fought like a man who didn't care about dying. Because maybe he didn't. Maybe he already had. He broke 2 of my ribs in the first exchange. But I carved a gash across his neck that hissed, not blood. Steam. There was something inside him, something synthetic. Augmented. He wasn't just a revenant. He was a weaponized corpse. We fought for nearly 10 minutes. Concrete shattered, metal bent. My vision blurred from blood and adrenaline. But I held my ground, because I wasn't fighting just to survive. I was fighting to remind them, whoever was watching through his eyes, that I wasn't theirs. That I never was. Eventually, he faltered. Not from pain. From hesitation. Something cracked inside that programming. Something remembered. And in that second, I drove my blade into his side and dropped him. Hard. He didn't die. He wasn't built for that. But he stopped moving. And at his feet, I found it. A second drive. Unmarked. Still warm. I pocketed it and disappeared into the night. Because whatever came next wasn't going to be a one-on-one fight. The others were waking up. And they weren't coming to play nice. Part 7. Echo Protocol. The drive sable dust left behind wasn't just intel. It was intent. There's a difference. Intel is information. Intent is a blueprint for murder. Every line of code, every encrypted file, every access point on that drive pointed to one terrifying conclusion. They knew I was coming. Echo Protocol wasn't reactionary. It was preemptive. A kill switch with teeth. And buried at the heart of it, one word, a location. Echo. No acronym. No explanation. Just a place. Latitude. Longitude. Greenland. I ran the coordinates 3 times. Same result every time. Middle of the ice sheet. No cities. No roads. No life. Just white. But I knew better. Cerberus doesn't build above ground. They don't advertise. They bury things. And this one they buried deep. Echo wasn't a base. It was a failsafe. A cold, buried heart at the end of the world. Designed for one purpose. Kill anything they couldn't control. Including me. I chartered a flight under a dead man's name. One I'd used once during an op in Kyrgyzstan. Rented a snowcat from an old smuggler who asked no questions and accepted cash. The further north I traveled, the more the silence felt personal. Like the planet itself wanted me to turn back. No birds. No trees. No color. Just wind, white, and the constant grinding of gears across ice. I reached the coordinates after sunset. If you could call it sunset. The sky never fully darkens in those parts. Just bleeds gray and blue into eternity. There was no building, no entry point, just an indentation in the ice, like a scar. And beneath that, a heat signature. Faint, but steady. I began digging with my hands, then with an emergency shovel from the snowcat. After 2 hours, I hit steel. A hatch, circular, marked with 3 rings. Cerberus's symbol. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Not because I was afraid, because I knew whatever I found down there would change everything. The descent was long. A vertical shaft carved through frozen earth, lined with frost-covered rungs. No lights. No sounds. Just me. And whatever waited below. When I hit bottom, I almost couldn't believe it. It looked like a data center crossed with a mausoleum. Cryopods lined the walls, hundreds. Some open. Some sealed. Some broken. And in the center of the room, a single black terminal. Active. Waiting. I approached. Try not to breathe too loud. Because for the first time since crawling out of my grave, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not rage. Not grief. Dread. The screen flickered. Booted up with a whisper. Then came the message. Welcome, subject unbound. This place was built for me. To monitor me. To study me. To end me. Echo wasn't just the kill switch. It was the lab that made the decision. I should have destroyed it right then. But something deeper held me there. A voice behind me. Smooth. Cold. You're late, it said. I turned and froze. Sable dust. Alive. Or something like it. Standing just outside the glow of the monitors, dressed in that same mat armor. But this time, he wasn't hunting. He was waiting. Part 8. Glacier Black. The air in Echo felt wrong. Not just cold. Not just sterile. But watched. Every breath echoed like it didn't belong to me. The walls hummed with buried energy, like the place had a heartbeat, slow and ancient. And sable dust stood in its center. Not charging. Not attacking. Just waiting. You're late, he said again. His voice had changed. Not robotic. Not fully human. Something in between. Like Cerberus had rebuilt his larynx out of regret and protocol. I circled slowly. Every inch of the chamber lit by harsh, flickering lights embedded in the frost. The cryopods hissed behind us, some still pulsing with blue light. Others shattered. I could see my breath. I couldn't see his. What is this place? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just tilted his head, almost like a curious animal. Echo is where they decide who stays dead. And who gets to come back? You weren't supposed to return, Darius. You were supposed to lead. You failed. I tightened my grip on the blade inside my coat, still warm from my body heat. No, I refused. Sable stepped forward, slow, deliberate. They modeled this facility after your mind. That stopped me cold. What? Your thought patterns, your decision trees, your kill ratios. They ran simulations, thousands. Echo isn't just a lab. It's a mirror, designed to judge what you do and build soldiers who'll do it better. My mouth went dry. I looked around again at the frozen pods, the empty walls, the black glass in the ceiling. Echo wasn't just tracking revenants. It was training them. In my image. They're not making soldiers, Sable said. They're making you. Then he attacked. No preamble. No hesitation. He moved like lightning, striking from angles that didn't make sense, bending physics and muscle in ways no human body should. The floor cracked beneath us. I barely parried the first blow before he was on me, grabbing, twisting, driving me backward into the cryo vault wall. The impact knocked the wind out of me. I saw stars, then fire. We tore through a frozen server rack. Glass exploded. Metal sparked. I fought dirty, elbows, knees, blunt strikes to his augments. But nothing fazed him, because he wasn't just fighting for orders. He was fighting to prove a point. They made me because of you, he shouted. I'm the correction, the one they can't control. He slammed me through a steel panel. My ears rang. Rib cracked. But I got one hand to my belt, triggered the microcharge I planted at entry. The ceiling above us erupted in a rain of ice and metal. It was enough. I surged forward and drove my blade into his shoulder, deep enough to hit the circuitry. He staggered. For the first time, he bled. Not red. Not oil. Something in between. They'll never stop, he gasped. You're just the beginning. The blueprints are global now. You can't erase what they've already made. I twisted the blade and shoved him into an open pod, slamming the cryo seals shut as frost exploded around him. His last words echoed through the glass. You can't stop what you are. I didn't answer, just stared at his frozen face, still smiling. Then I set the thermal charges, 10 in total, planted across support beams and core conduits. As I climbed the shaft back to the surface, Echo hummed louder, almost angry. I reached the top, looked back one last time, and pressed the detonator. The explosion didn't echo. It swallowed. A bloom of fire and steam, muffled by miles of snow and silence. Echo was gone, but one thing stayed with me. Right before I left, the main terminal flashed one last time. A single word. No explanation. Just a name. Thorn. Part 9. Thorn Crown. His name was Dr. Silas Thorn. To most of the world, he didn't exist. No published journals. No records of his degrees. Not even a grainy surveillance photo. But in the files I pulled from Echo before the detonation, he was everywhere. Lead architect of Project Ashborn. The ghost in every protocol. The last signature on my resurrection report. He wasn't just the scientist who brought me back. He designed me. I found him in an old biotech compound in the Swiss Alps, abandoned on the books, but still drawing quiet power off a diverted grid. Getting their mint crossing frozen ravines, bribing 2 NATO checkpoints, and surviving a dead-drop ambush in Munich that nearly tore open my last lung. But I made it, because this wasn't a hit. This was a reckoning. The compound was silent, furnished like a lab, but lived in like a monastery. Books stacked in corners. Empty teacups with cracked rims. A chessboard mid-game, the Black King missing. I followed the trail, down into a chamber with glass walls and soft lighting. There, in the center, stood Thorn. Old, slender, white beard trimmed like a philosopher, not a war criminal. He wore a gray sweater, sleeves rolled. When he turned to face me, there wasn't a flicker of surprise. Only recognition. Darius, he said, like he just bumped into me at a reunion. You look well. I raised my pistol. He didn't flinch. You know why I'm here. He nodded. To kill your maker. That's what the narrative demands. I stepped closer. Tried to feel something. Anger, satisfaction, clarity. All I felt was cold. You pulled the trigger on my life. No, he said. You were already dying. Multiple organ trauma. Brain hemorrhage. Do you want to see your scans? He turned a monitor toward me, pulled up data like he was showing me a weather forecast. Vitals. Neural degeneration. Blood oxygen collapse. You weren't going to make it. We intervened. We gave you a second chance. You didn't save me, I said. You reprogrammed me. He smiled gently. No one's ever truly reprogrammed, Darius. Only nudged. I paced slowly, watching him. How many? I asked. 74 successful resurrections. 32 terminated. 25 activated. 18 off-grid. 1 unbound. Why me? He looked up, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that scared me more than detachment. Pride. You were pure, untethered. Your trauma made you immune to traditional conditioning. But still, you chose purpose. You chose action. You weren't just a soldier. I was a weapon. No, he said. You were a seed. A prototype for leadership. They wanted to build an army. I wanted to build a god. He stepped closer, held out something small. A pistol. Sleek. Unmarked. Safety off. You can kill me now, he said. But that won't stop what's coming. Try me. Cerberus was just one branch. The root is deeper, global, ideological. What we've done is already public. It just hasn't been recognized yet. You think that makes it justified? I think it makes it inevitable. I raised a gun. He didn't move. Shoot me, Darius. In the father you never asked for. Or walk away, and let me live long enough to see what you become. I stared at him for a long time, then lowered the weapon. No. Mercy. Worse, I said. Witness. I set charges across the lab. Redundant fuses, military-grade thermal lances. He stood and watched me do it. Never moved. Never spoke. When I walked out, I didn't look back. The blast turned the hillside into a crater. Melted snow. Shattered glass. If he survived it, good. Let him choke on a legacy he built. Let him watch me burn it down. One lab at a time. Because I wasn't just unbound now. I was unshackled. And I wasn't the prototype anymore. I was the final version. The last thing Cerberus ever made. And the first thing that would end them. Part 10. Graves Unbound. The world thinks it's safe now. Echo is gone. Cerberus is bleeding. Ashborn is ash. But the truth? There's no such thing as safety. Not for men like me. I didn't come back to make peace. I came back to make sure they never felt it again. Still, there's a moment after the smoke clears when you wonder what you are without a war. For the first time since I clawed my way out of the dirt, I stood still. Really still. No target. No agenda. No next move. Just the wind. It was strange. Almost peaceful. Almost. I sat in a hotel room in Istanbul. Small. Dusty. The kind of place where questions die before they're asked. A burner laptop glowed on the nightstand. Beside it, 6 encrypted drives. Each one full of classified horrors. Proof of the programs, the bodies, the names. I uploaded them. One by one. Every outlet. Every dead drop forum. Every whistleblower chain that still had a pulse. I didn't hide the metadata. I wanted them to know it came from me. Let truth be the bullet. I watched the uploads finish and felt nothing. No applause. No headlines. No justice rolling down like thunder. Just silence. Because truth doesn't heal. It haunts. Somewhere out there, they're already rebuilding. New names. New faces. New monsters wearing old ties. But they'll remember mine. Because I was their creation. Their weapon. Their experiment. Their warning. And now I'm none of those things. I stopped running. Stopped burning. I started walking. Not toward vengeance. Not toward redemption. But toward something simpler. A life of my own choosing. Not as Corporal Graves. Not as subject unbound. Not as the prototype. Just Darius. I walk through cities where no one knows me. I eat food that doesn't taste like dirt anymore. I sleep sometimes. And when I wake, I remember who I used to be. And who I'll never be again. Because the dead don't come back to be forgiven. They come back to remind the living what they try to bury. And me? I'm the grave they couldn't cover up. I am unbound. And I'm still walking. Thanks for listening to Echoed Stories. Before you go, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from and what time of day you're listening. Are you winding down at night, commuting in the morning, or somewhere in between? Your feedback helps shape future stories, so don't be a stranger. Until next time, keep your ears open and your secrets safe.